from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We're taking a look at the Broncos-Seahawks game coming up on Saturday. And Ben, I think the first thing we want to get to is the quarterbacks. What can they clean up? What can they improve on, which was a pretty impressive performance against Minnesota, as they head into the Seattle game?
With Drew, I think there was a couple of passes there, one of which didn't count, one of which did against that were just outside the fingertips of his receivers. Maybe want to be a little bit better on the ball placement on those kinds of things. Not much for Drew to clean up, other than that. For Teddy, taking advantage, stopping, slowing down a little bit, and taking advantage of waiting for your guys to get open deep. That was a problem. You go back and look at the 822, Teddy Bridgewater. He had nice 4 or 5 completion or whatever it was, whatever his stat line was, 7 or 8 completions for 40 yards in that game. But he let a lot of guys run free deep that he didn't take the time to let the route develop on the all-22. And that's a problem. He's just too invested in getting that ball out and trying to get a couple of yards instead of letting the big play develop, and it really cost himself some huge plays in that game. So you'd like to see some things develop against the Seattle defense. Give it time and not just take that underneath throw just because it's right there right away.
And see, what's important about that for me is an indication of, well, you were winning that game, you're protecting a lead. Maybe that's a little bit of the mindset, but you need to be practicing all the scenarios here, including one where maybe you do need to be more efficient and the game is still relatively close. So for Teddy Bridgewater, we've seen that during the course of training camp. He takes a lot of the underneath stuff and some of the check downs, and that can be efficient, and you can move 20 to 20. Red zone can be a little bit of a different deal, and there are going to be plenty of game scenarios where it's a little bit closer, and you need him to be able to be looking downfield and giving your team a chance to have some explosive plays.
Practice how you're going to play. And the other thing to remember here is forget the score in the preseason. Everything matters but the score. You shouldn't care what the score is in the preseason. Teddy Bridgewater shouldn't be protecting a lead. He should be going out there trying to win a job. And I didn't see that. What I did see was a guy who continued to be the same guy he's been throughout his career, a guy that's risk-averse or tries to play it safe. And unfortunately, being risk-averse all the time, there's going to be situations where you get behind the down and distance markers, and then you're going to have to be able to push it, and that's what gets him in trouble. That's why Teddy Bridgewater has nearly the same interception numbers as Drew Lock, nearly the same turnover numbers, because he gets himself in those situations, and then when he has to do that, he's unable to do it and turns the ball over.
As far as anybody else on the offensive side of the ball, want to see a little bit more from Quinn Miners, want to see more Netani Moody, because he obviously was a guy that was a standout against Minnesota. Who else jumps out to you on the offensive side that you'd like to see more from?
Let's see a little more Javonte. I thought it looked good, which is like I said, in training camp it didn't really show up. That violent running style didn't really show up till he hit the game, and so he's a gamer. Okay, cool. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. We had the 2 big runs. That was nice. There was a short yardage play he didn't get much on. I don't think he converted. We want to make sure he can get, because that has been an Achilles heel of the Broncos for several years now. Short yardage rush situations, and they've been unable to do that. And so then they go with these gadget plays that don't work out in short yardage. And we can go back to the Musgrave era for some of these. We can go on and on. Have the guy who, when you need 2, he's going to get you 3. And Javonte needs to become that guy. So I want to see a couple of short yardage situations where he goes in there and he takes that yardage from the Seattle defense.
Yeah, we'll ultimately see who they decide to bring out there. Imagine Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler will continue to get plenty of opportunities. We don't know yet about Cortland Sutton or Noah Fant, but I think any reps that you get there, even if it's Teddy Bridgewater at times, maybe not Drew Lock with the ones, I think there's opportunities there to at least get ready for the season. Let's get to the defense. Now, on the defensive side, Vic Fangio says he expects to have some of the starters out there. And again, we all look at this. We don't really know what it looks like in the 3 preseason format versus the 4 preseason format, where we know usually the 3rd game is when you want the dress rehearsal. The 2nd game probably isn't quite ready necessarily for a lot of these guys to go full go as in a game. So what are you sort of expecting out of the defense?
I also think you're going to see guys that struggle with soft tissue not play quite a bit, because it's a turf stadium up there, and so you may see soft tissue risks not play in this game. But for the defense, like Von's not going to play. I think you're going to see most of the defense out there, and probably for a full quarter or so, just to kind of get your feet back under you and get going, get used to hitting again, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's good. You don't need too much more than that. Just get out there and kind of make your plays and move forward, and then they can evaluate the bottom part of the roster. They can evaluate the bottom 60 guys and figure out who's going to make this roster. And that's what these games are really about. The problem has been, and the reason that there's such an animus about preseason games and all that is because they charge full price for games that are essentially scouting sessions. Everybody loves the preseason games except the fans.
Yeah.
To be honest, the coaches love it. Scouts love it. They get a chance to look at these guys. Players love it. It's an opportunity to shine, right? So everybody loves these except for starters and fans, and that's why it's down to 3 now, but trying to figure out how you're going to allocate getting guys prepared to play for the season versus evaluating the bottom third of your roster.
So who are the guys on the defensive side that you're interested in seeing a little bit more from in this game? Because, again, we saw Caden Stearns look pretty good, PJ Locke.
Stearns and Locke.
The back end of the defensive roster, I think I'd like to see more from Justin Sternad, and then maybe if we get to see Baron Browning, who finally made it back to practice this week. I feel like those are some of the key guys, because more or less when we get to maybe, I guess, pass rusher Jonathan Cooper, maybe talk about Andre Mintz, but, I mean, otherwise, for the rest of the guys, we mostly have seen what they are, and their situation or position of making the roster is kind of solidified.
Well, right, and I do want to see a little more Stearns, PJ Locke, those guys. I want to see I want to see these backups come out and continue to do it. Jonathan Cooper, Mintz, you mentioned McTelvin, Deshaun Williams. That's who you want to see is the guys who are going to be twos on the two deep, and where they're at and what their ability is if somebody goes down due to injury, what their ability is to come in and be the guy. And so you want to get them up to speed, and those are the guys I want to see.
The final practice of training camp was mostly a walkthrough. You ran some scout, got a chance to run some crowd noise, and Drew Lock came out there with the first team. So I think some people are making a little bit more out of that as we're looking for the different X-Files themed conspiracy theories about what's happening with the quarterback. But Vic Fangio said they are pretty close to making a decision with the quarterback. What can change between now and next week in the game that will really tip this thing one way or the other, or do you feel like that's already being tipped?
I think it's being tipped. I really do. I think we already have, and I think everybody knows how this thing is trending. I think the question here really is, can they go out and show consistency? Can they keep it clean? The problem with that is that if you're Teddy Bridgewater going out there to keep it clean, well, that's kind of what you've done.
Right.
Except that you haven't done that in training camp because you throw more interceptions than Locke. But, going out, I don't know if that's enough for him to win it. I think Teddy needs to go out and hunt. We talked with Tim Jenkins prior to preseason about what these quarterbacks needed to do, and I think it's flipped. I think Drew needs to go out there and play a clean, basically efficient game, show he can move the football and show, because he's shown he's got the arm, and we don't need to see the arm of Drew Lock. We all know he's got it, right? We need to see him be efficient and move the ball and not get bogged down, and then we need to see Teddy hunt. We need to see Teddy being able to overcome negative down and distance situations and being behind the chains.
The good news for the Broncos, though, is both these guys remain on the roster. You need to make a decision on who's going to be the starter, but we've said for a long time that I wouldn't be shocked at some point in the season one or both guys end up playing at different intervals, and only because in part of what the NFL has become, where you end up using your backup quarterback more often. It seems like guys get little nicks up here and there, and you need a quality veteran or you need a quality backup to be able to come in. So I don't look at this as a finish line. I kind of caution people on that when we talk about it on the show. And same for the quarterbacks. This isn't a finish line. You become the starter on Monday or Tuesday whenever Vic Fangio announces it. Guess what? This is when the real work begins, because you said it, consistency, something both quarterbacks have been mired with over the course of their careers.
Right, and that's, normally you would think that a 7-year veteran would be the consistent, safe guy. But again, we go back to training camp and, again, it hasn't. So I just think that if you're Teddy Bridgewater, you needed to come in and win this job, and I'm not convinced that he has. And so I think that Drew Lock and his improvements, I think they've shown enough. He needs to go out and finish showing it in this game. Put an exclamation point on it. Say,
that's it.
This is my job. And leave no doubt. When all's said and done, leave no doubt and be the guy. And then be the guy going forward.
Do you make much of the fact, and this is we finished up training camp today, do you make much of the fact that this was a little bit of an up and down practice week? That we saw kind of, again, on Tuesday, it seemed like they just weren't all as sharp as they could be. They got a little bit better on Wednesday, and then Thursday was more or less a walkthrough. Vic Fangio had said something yesterday during the press conference talking about how the Vikings practices actually do matter quite a bit in their evaluation. What do you read into that?
I don't read anything into that. Day one went to Teddy. Day two went to Drew. I don't read too much into that. I think, like I said, you saw it in game action. You saw it. We all saw it. And when you look at the A22, it's worse. The disparity is larger. I can't see a scenario in which you're just you go with Drew, you roll with Locke, and if it doesn't work, then you can always go back to Teddy Bridgewater. You can't name Teddy the starter and then go back to Drew.
I kind of view it the other way around. I actually think that you could name Teddy the starter, and if Teddy doesn't quite give you what you need, you could go to Drew. I don't know if Drew lacks confidence. And especially the way we framed it this offseason about Drew and his future with the organization. If he doesn't win the starter out of camp, I don't know if you can really go back to him.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm saying if he doesn't win the starter, you can't go back to him.
That's
you can't,
right. Okay.
You can't name Teddy.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you roll with Drew, and you can always go back to Teddy.
Gotcha.
But you can't always go back to Drew. If Teddy wins the job or you name Teddy the starter, you got to stick with him, and that's the thing. So for me, just you roll with Drew. You got some pretty easy games. I say easy; it's still the NFL in week 1 and 2 that are very winnable, and that should continue the snowball rolling downhill confidence kind of thing, and should help.
All right, we'll look forward to breaking it down with you guys coming up next week. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.